you can't, I mean, this is the point, you can't just disappear, right? Because those of you who've been late, you probably missed, what did you perform, what, 3-4 songs before that?
2 songs.
But before there was even another, you missed something big time. So I don't think we can just leave a situation where Onissimo Siatula just goes off stage with a bit of applause. We need to make a darn big noise, okay? To say, well done, you were super. And maybe, I don't think it'll happen, but if any of the speakers get speaker fright, just be ready to take over and sing, okay? I'm just saying. Okay, there we are. Thank you so much. I speak often about champions as a theme that I talk about on a whole range of things, and I just want to identify that what you've done is champion-like. So well done to you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll certainly have more from Onissimo Siatula later on. I think she was brilliant, especially those that missed the early parts, okay? But let's get moving. You know, a while back, good few years ago, in fact, I was asked to MC an event, and you know, before you do, you're like, I don't know, I need to check my diary and you know, see whether it's convenient. And then I was told at that time that actually the keynote speaker is Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And I'm like, okay, yes, I will MC the event, okay? So that is a while back. And about a week or so ago, I got a call again from Stellenbosch this time. It's like, Ashraf, are you able to come up to Stellenbosch to MC an event? And you know, the usual questions get asked, like what day, what time, let me see what I can do. Then I was told, you know what, we have an interesting scenario, because you have the keynote in terms of the social justice lecture being delivered by Advocate Kholeka, who's the incumbent public protector, and of course, there'll be a conversation with a former public protector as well. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's unprecedented. Yes, I will certainly be here, okay? So, I mean, that's why I'm here. You may have your own reasons for being here, but I can tell you clearly at this point in time, there's nowhere else I want to be than exactly where I am right now. And if you concur with me, perhaps give yourself a big round of applause. So, my name is Ashraf Garda, and it's a strange one. You often get introduced and then you get told, introduce yourself. So how much or little do you say? I don't know. But anyway, I'm the founder and the champion spotter of a project called Champion South Africa, with the vision to change the mindset that will build the champions that are needed to build South Africa into a champion nation. I'm also a conversation architect, which is a fancy word for saying I do program directing and moderating. It just sounds cuter, right? But very importantly, I'm a member of the Council of Social Justice Champions that forms part of this Center for Social Justice, which, as you're well aware of, is driven primarily by our former public protector, Professor Thuli Madonsela. I just want us to acknowledge the importance of that center and her role in that up front, so please do so. And there are others I want to acknowledge, or else, you know. The Chair of Council, Dr. Nikki Newton-King, and members of Council had a good chat with you, Dr. Nikki Newton-King, already outside, great, and looking forward to more chats later on, but just to acknowledge your presence, as well as the Rector, Vice Chancellor, Professor Wim de Villiers, who will come up as well to come and talk just now. Great to acknowledge you, and members of the Rectorate, including DVC Research, Innovation, and Postgraduate Studies, Professor Sibusiso Moyo, and DVC Social Impact Transformation and Personnel, Professor Nico Koopman. And there's more. The Dean of the Law Faculty, Professor Nicola Smit, will also speak later on. The Deputy Dean of the Law School, Professor Juanita Pinar, the host and the Director of the Center for Social Justice, I've acknowledged already, but once again, Professor Thuli Madonsela, and other senior directors, the Mayor's representative, Ms. Crawley, Ambassador Hakan Juholt from the Swedish who's the Swedish ambassador, in fact, and members of parliament, judges, academics, students, media, civil society, and I guess there's probably a whole lot of other chommies that I may see when I spot them in a crowd. I've certainly had a quick chat with Gaius Itoli. We'll probably do another one later on, and I think Louise is somewhere up front there that I've seen. We'll probably have that chat as well. So good seeing many others, and looking forward to having further conversations in the course of the evening, right? Now, before I get going, I'm just a firm believer in this, is this a historic event or is it not? What do you guys think? Like there's a bit of a muted response. If it's yes, then let's hear it loudly. Yeah, okay. Well, then you need to record it, okay? So I'm lousy with selfies, but I'm going to try. I want you guys to take pictures of yourselves right away. Can you do that now? We're not going to move without this. Otherwise it's all off the record, okay? So I'll pause. You can take a picture of me too, but more importantly, take pictures of yourselves. Do it right away, otherwise we're not going to start. There we are. You see, because I'm very scared if we leave the pictures for later, it doesn't happen. Then it's as if this entire event did not happen. You've all taken your pictures, right? Okay, we've got some more homework for you, right? I'm not going to ask you who's on social media because I'm just making the assumption that just about every one of us understands the need to amplify messages. So we all are. So whichever social media platforms you use, and you can do that right away, use two significant hashtags. One is called the hashtag Social Justice Day, and the other is Social Justice Lecture. The Social Justice Lecture, Social Justice Day. But I'll tell you what I want you to do. I want you to post those pictures, and you can do that now. Now, we'll check out who's done it. I want you to post it now, and then use the caption saying something like, "We are here for social justice." Can you do that? We are here for social justice. And then use those two hashtags, Social Justice Day and Social Justice Lecture. I'll certainly check it out. We'll pick it up. We will share that as and when we find that the more you post around that, the better. Now, it's interesting I say that we are here for social justice because, I've just flown in from Johannesburg, right? And, it is oft repeated, this contrast between Sandton and Alexandra Township. And we talk about it as the Sandton, the richest square mile on the African continent. And then on the opposite side of a highway, we see an impoverished community. We see a sense of privilege on the one hand, we see inequality on the other. We see wealth, we see poverty. We see a sense of security, we see a sense of insecurity. We see a sense of hope and ambition and vigor and drive on the one side of the highway, and we see the absence of that on the other. And there's been many pictures, I think famously in the Time magazine, that reflected that incredible divide, right? Now, why do I say that? Because I thought about this as I flew in this morning, and it's an important question. What is the social justice of the people of Sandton? What is their social justice? What is their framing of social justice? And then, what is the social justice of the people of Alex? What is the Sandton social justice? What is the Alex social justice? Or are we talking of the same social justice? Or are we talking about something completely different? And that's a challenge. I don't want answers. You can tweet it out, by the way. But that's an important consideration. It's an important consideration because I've had a couple of chats with Prof. Tully, I think in the last couple of weeks on various social media platforms, or like on Twitter or Twitter X Spaces that I've hosted, and a couple of things that have come through. And I think it's important to just mention that up front. Because when we talk about social justice, you talk about equality, you talk about the absence of poverty, you talk about a sense of equality or equal access to opportunity, and more. And the reality is, activists talk about it, sometimes political parties make reference to it, governments in this country, but other parts of the world make reference to all of that. But very few frame it as social justice. And I don't know why, and I think Prof. Tuli said so to me the other day, like, she doesn't know why either. Like, why don't we call it what it really is? We talk about poverty, we say inequality, we say lack of we talk about inclusion, we talk about exclusion, but we don't really refer it to as social justice. And you know, certainly my understanding coming from the marketing space is, you know, a motor car is just a motor car until you call it by its name. So whether then you call it a Ferrari or a Porsche or a Suzuki or a BMW or a Mercedes, you then branded it. And when you brand it, it takes on its own sense of emotions that people can latch onto. And in sporting terms, you know, a rugby team is just a rugby team. It just is a rugby team until you give it a name. And then you color it in green and gold. And then you all get a whole nation behind it. And I say that because on this day, the World Day of Social Justice, there's a sense of absence around branding this World Day of Social Justice a day of social justice. And therefore the challenge is to all of us to say, how are we going to amplify it by branding it for what it is, so that when we talk about the issues of inequality, we get to the nub of the problem, and we talk about it, and we raise the issues of social justice. So that then is the big challenge. Now, on this day, one person has certainly spoken about it, Prof. Tuli Madonsela. I saw your tweets very early this morning, by the way, just making the point about how important this is, right? And I think the Center for Social Justice here at Stellenbosch has certainly done that. By virtue of its name, has ensured that it is at the very center of the conversations, not just at this campus and the people that are part of it, but it must be at the very center of conversations throughout our country, and we must pray that it has to become the center of the conversations throughout the world. And if we are not going to amplify it, then the big question really is, well, then who is actually going to do that? So there's a big responsibility for all of us. In terms of this day of social justice, we all know there's a significant mentioning of this annual social justice lecture, which I just want to very quickly pay attention to in terms of why this lecture, why this annual lecture. Well, this lecture is hosted, as you know, by Prof. Madonsela, as the director of the Center for Social Justice, and it ties in with the 20th of February, World Social Justice Day. It is part of various activities of the CSJ and the extensive social justice plan, or the Musa Plan for Social Justice, which was launched 2018, so like 6 years ago. And the Musa Plan is a social justice accelerator program that aims to catalyze the process of ending poverty and equalizing life opportunities by 2030, a critical goal, as envisaged in the National Development Plan in South Africa, aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. And the idea around this annual lecture is to spotlight social justice as a global challenge and to catalyze efforts to transform societies to become more socially just by becoming places where there is equal enjoyment of all rights of freedom for all. So that really is a big challenge, and I just want to ask all of you, if you concur with those aims, perhaps we can make the biggest noise possible before we get to the next part of the program. Let's do that. Woo, make a big noise about it. Thank you. Let's, however, get the program rolling. Firstly, by the singing of the national anthem. Now, where's our fabulous opera singer? If you can come up onto the stage once again, and then we can all join in off stage. Thank you.
Keynote.
Sports events, eh? All right, that is beautiful. Thank you, thank you. Let's now, I would like to call up, we're going to have the reading of the Constitution, the preamble that is. I'd like to call on Liam Gillison, JV, stroke S Transformation Officer at Stellenbosch University, together with Abongile Kutu, who's the SRC Deputy President at Stellenbosch University. You can come up here, please. You guys are and before they do so, I just want to emphasize this point. The purpose of the reading of the preamble to this audience is to remind all of us in this room and those watching online, and there are many watching online, exactly what it really means, how it can be a driving force for all of us in our country to ensure that we can move from whatever state that we're in right now to a better state, even if we do it one day or one brick at a time. I leave it to you to remind us of that. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to stand here and read the preamble to the Constitution. I'm aware that we're a little bit behind schedule, but just in light of the demonstration outside, I think I call on everyone to just hear this with a new set of ears. And I want you to all ask yourselves what you can do to fulfill the promises in this preamble. The preamble to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, 1996. We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who have suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who have worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. We therefore, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic, so as to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundations for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by the law. Improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person, and build a united and democratic South Africa, able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. May God protect our people. Nkosi sikelele i-Afrika, Morena Boloke, Sechaba sa Yesu, God seën South Africa. God bless South Africa. Mudzimu vatuchetsa Afrika. Hosi katekiza Afrika. Aanhef. Ons, die mense van Suid-Afrika, erken die ongerechtighede van ons verlede. Huldig diegene wat vir gerechtigheid en vryheid in ons land gelei het. Respecteer diegene wat hulle bywe het om ons land op te bou en te ontwikkel. En glo dat Suid-Afrika behoort aan almal wat daarin woon, verenig in ons verskeidenheid. Daarom neem ons deur ons vryverkose verteenwoordigers hierdie grondwet aan die hoogste reg van die Republiek, teen einde die verledeheid aan die verlede te heel en 'n samelewing gegrond op demokratiese waardes, maatskaplike geregtighede en basies menseregte te skep. Die grondslag te lê vir 'n demokratiese en oop samelewing waarin regering gegrondves is op die wil van die bevolking en elke burger gelyk deur die reg beskerm word. Die lewensgehalte van alle burgers te verhoog en die potensiaal van elke mens te ontsluit en 'n verenigde en demokratiese Suid-Afrika te bou wat sy regmagtige plek in 'n soewereine staat en die gemeenskap van nasies kan inneem. Mag God ons mense beskerm. Nkosi sikelele i-Afrika, Morena Boloka, Sechaba sa Yesu, God seën South Africa. God bless South Africa. Mudzimu vatuchetsa Africa. Hosi katekiza Africa. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Mandibhotise ngale Gcaleka. Igama lami ndingu-Abongile Quthu. Ndizokwenza nje umsebenzi omfitshane ukufunda le ntshayelelo ngolwimi lwenkobe isiXhosa. Intshayelelo. Thina bantu baseMzantsi Afrika siyaziqonda iintswela bulungisa zexesha elidlulileyo. Sibothulela umnqwazi abo baye beva ubunzima ukuze kubekho ubulungisa nenkululeko elizweni lethu. Siyabahlonela abo baye basebenzela ukwakha nokuphucula ilizwe lethu. Kwaye sikholelwa kwelokuba uMzantsi Afrika ngowabo bonke abahlala kuwo, bemanyene nangona bengafani. Ngoko ke ngabameli bethu abanyulwe ngokukhululekileyo, samkela lo mgaqo siseko njengomthetho wongamileyo weRepublic ukuze kuncibeke imisantsa yexesha elidlulileyo. Kwakhekhe noluntu lwentando yesininzi, ubulungisa basentlalweni namalungelo oluntu asisiseko. Kwandlalwe iziseko zoluntu lwentando yesininzi nolukhululekileyo, apho urhulumente ongowentando yabantu kwaye ummi ngamnye ekhuselwe ngumthetho ngokulinganayo nabanye. Kuphuculwe umgangatho wobomi babo bonke abemi. Kukhululwe nomntu ngamnye afikelele kwelona nqanaba anokufikelela kulo lobuchule bakhe. Kananjalo kwakhiwe uMzantsi Afrika omanyeneyo wentando yesininzi, okwaziyo ukuthabatha indawo yawo onelungelo layo njengelizwe elizimeleyo kusapho phakathi kwamanye amazwe. Ngamana uThixo ngabakhusela abantu bakowethu. Nkosi sikelele iAfrika. Morena Boloka Sechaba sa Yesu. God seën South Africa. God bless South Africa. Mudzimu vatuchetsa Afrika. Hosi katekisa Afrika, manbulele.
Right, the points have been made, right, from two young South Africans, and they're challenging all of us. And let me just leave it at that. We've had my welcome, we're going to have the welcome from someone who's maybe better qualified than me to do just that. I'd like to call upon Professor Wim de Villiers, who's the Rector, Vice-Chancellor at Stellenbosch University, also co-chair of the Council of Social Justice Champions.
Good evening, esteemed guests. So I'm Wim de Villiers, I'm Rector and Vice-Chancellor, and as Rector of Stellenbosch University, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to the 5th Annual Social Justice Lecture. And a very special welcome to today's guest speaker, South Africa's Public Protector, Advocate Kholeka Gcaleka. And like Professor Thuli Madonsela, one of your predecessors in your role as Public Protector, you play a crucial role in strengthening South Africa's constitutional democracy and our country's pursuit of social justice, and we very much look forward to having you speak. Promoting and living in a free and democratic society is an integral part of the preamble of the Constitution of South Africa, as you've just heard, and as you also see displayed on those plates in front of our old main building and the Faculty of Law. But as was said, unfortunately, South African society remains divided and unequal in its entirety, even after almost 30 years of democracy. We believe that social justice is an essential aspect of building a fair and equitable society where all individuals have equal access to opportunities, resources, and basic human rights. We aspire fervently to this goal. At Stellenbosch University, we have made a commitment to be a force for good in the transformation of South Africa into a place of opportunity for all, a place of shared prosperity, and a place where there is sustainable, peaceful coexistence. This is not an easy road, especially considering the history of our institution. There are many, many challenges. We have limited resources, and it often requires us to have uncomfortable conversations. But these are also not lofty ideals. They are causes well worth our time and effort. And that's why we at Stellenbosch University, why we've committed our support to the Center for Social Justice and its director, Professor Thuli Madonsela, where the advancement of social justice in the interest of sustainable economic and social well-being and peace is of the utmost importance. I'd very much like to thank Professor Madonsela and her colleagues at the Center for Social Justice for organizing this fantastic lecture and for doing this very, very important work. So enjoy the lecture and the rest of the evening, and thank you.
And that brings us to, effectively the two most important elements of tonight, the social justice lecture, and then a conversation between two significant South Africans in this auditorium. That will come later on. Let me then introduce the social justice lecture by introducing the public protector, Advocate Kholeka Gcaleka, who, in a quick bio of herself, she resumed her career as an aspirant prosecutor in 2004, and left the NPA in 2016 as a Senior Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions after 10 years of her 12 years of prosecutions and executive management at the High Court level. She thereafter was employed as the Special Advisor to the Ministers for the Department of Public Service and Administration, the Department of Home Affairs and Department of Finance in our country, with a specific focus in the areas of administration, legal, legislation, and policy development, together with strategy, compliance, and governance. That sounds like everything. She's also served on the Committee of Inquiry, probing the state of affairs of municipalities across Gauteng. And she's also served on various boards and is currently a board member of the International Ombudsman Institute, which is the IOI, a member of the United Nations Working Group of the International Ombudsman's Institute itself, and is the chairperson of the African Ombudsman's Research Center. And there's more, she's also the co-drafter of the Africa Peer Review Mechanism South African Charter of the National General Council. And as we know, she is now the public protector, but the legal experience spans a period of 19 years. She holds a record as the first black female national chairperson of the National Society of State Advocates, holding an LLB degree from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and an LLM with her dissertation titled Impact, and this is important, Impact of the Financial Intelligence Center Act and the Risk-Based Approach on the Closing of Bank Accounts. I think we should all have a chat with you about that, specifically in commercial law from UJ, right? And currently doing a second master's in cybersecurity. I suppose you're probably going to talk about artificial intelligence as well, maybe sometime soon. That makes absolute sense. But let me then say this, let's put our hands together for South Africa's public protector.
Okay, you have to lower this.
I'll do it. Oh, yes, it is. Just make sure you're comfortable.
Thank you.
I'll just say something with it. No, it's not. I thought it's significant as I called up. I remember the time we met recently, because in her role as the public protector, you'll always be called a public protector now, you know that, right?
Getting used to it.
Yeah, we met up at the Whistleblowers Awards. I thought I'll just mention that in terms of your presence at those awards and therefore your role, your central role in being this watchdog for our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I approached the auditorium this evening, I was painstakingly reminded of a story my elder brother often so tells graphically of his years approaching the doors of higher education in the 1980s. He describes it that he went to look for school at Blackberry College to study his teacher's diploma. He stayed there for 3 days without food until my sister rescued him. And yet he had no space to study. He then proceeded to UNITRA, where he was admitted after a month, struggling to get food. Similar, but encouraging that at least the students standing outside of this auditorium, also in the plight for education to better their lives and the lives of the communities which they come from, at least today, in our democratic dispensation, the university is able to offer them food. And from the videos I had seen earlier in the year, the numbers have drastically decreased. We, however, urgently have to find lasting solutions. Allow me this evening to thank you, Program Director, for this opportunity, and to acknowledge the Chair of Council, Dr. Nikki Newton-King, and members of Council, Rector and Vice Chancellor, Professor Wim de Villiers, and members of the Rectorate, Dean of Law Faculty, Professor Nicola Smith, and the management of the law school, the host, my dear sister, and Director of the Center for Social Justice, Professor Thuli Madonsela, members of Parliament present, judges, academics, students, the media, civil society, business, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you all. I am truly honored today to share this platform with you, to contribute to the national agenda focusing on democracy and progressive transformation in respect of our country. It is an honor that comes with a great sense of responsibility, as this is an integral part of democratic building, democracy consolidation, and national building. It is these types of engagements that collectively build our democracy, consciousness, and values for society. South Africa's constitutional foundation is based on a quest for a high quality of life for all the people of South Africa. This is a necessary hallmark for social justice. It is therefore critical that we unpack on this journey and the role played by the public protector in the last 30 years. It has been in existence, but in different forms, even before our democratic dispensation. This year marks 30 years since the first democratic elections in 1994. The national sentiment among citizens, stakeholders, communities, and civil society seems to be the same. I quote, democratic, yet unequal, and still impoverished, I unquote. In this regard, the systemic and structural socioeconomic disparities in health, education, housing, the land, and social life remain the unfortunate hallmark entrenched in our society. However, I'm of the view that in taking stock of where we are as a country, 30 years later since our democracy, we need to recognize, appreciate, and acknowledge the courage, sacrifice, and commitment of those brave people who, through their collective efforts, laid the very foundation of the new democratic South Africa and the hopes and aspirations that we are able to reflect on today. This is to say, the establishment of a society based on democratic values, social justice, human dignity, and the achievement of equality and fundamental human rights. The challenges of the formal democratization of the state remains enormous. State reform, expanded service delivery of social services, job creation, poverty alleviation, and development all constitute the salient elements of this transformation. All these endeavors require a well-capacitated state in all its dynamics: government, legislative, and oversight institutions, and the judiciary. Transformation sought to deal with economic, political, social relations, and to improve the lives of the poorest of the poor in this country. This is entrenched in the Constitution and implemented through democratic institutions, processes, and systems. The emphasis was on overhauling discriminatory legislative framework, whilst creating a new governance arrangement to deliver democratic public goods and services. According to our preamble, read here by the students this evening, our globally acclaimed constitution, it is not the government of South Africa, a political party, an NGO, business, or segments of society, but we, I quote, the people of South Africa, I unquote, as a nation who made a solemn commitment 30 years ago to rectify past injustices, fostering equality, and establish a society based on 3 pillars: democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights and freedoms. Social justice is more than a moral imperative. In essence, social justice in the South African context is a multifaceted and progressive commitment to rectify past injustices. And today I say social justice must be an enabler to an equal and inclusive and sustainable economy for the better lives of the people. It is a commitment to fostering equality and creating a society where all citizens have the opportunity to thrive irrespective of their backgrounds and circumstances. It is a historical mission that seeks to correct injustices of the past while setting the fundamentals for a present and future socially just South Africa, aimed at creating a fair, inclusive, and equitable society, and is deeply interwoven with the nation's journey towards reconciliation, inclusivity, and sustainable development. The Constitution explicitly emphasizes social justice, and this is confirmed by the Concord judgment in the Grootboom matter, stating that, I quote, "The people of South Africa are committed to the attainment of social justice and the improvement of the quality of life for everyone." The preamble to our Constitution records this commitment, I unquote. It recognizes socioeconomic rights such as the right to housing, healthcare, and education. These rights are not mere aspirations, they are legally enforceable through our Constitution. Accordingly, social justice is not a rhetoric and deeply embedded in our legal system. But the Constitution is not only about rights and systems of legitimate enforceable rules, it is also concerned with the matter of how citizens relate to one another and how democratic institutions entrench the values of a just society, not only politically, but also economically and socially. Essentially, the Constitution promise of a better life for all means bringing an end to all manifestations of injustice and gross unfairness and synonyms such as prejudice, inequality, unlawfulness, inhumanity, maltreatment, inequality, malpractice, and misuse. Social justice is therefore more than a mere moral imperative, as previously stated. It is woven into a very fabric of our society, including our collective well-being and the inherent worth and dignity of every individual. It acknowledges that access to basic necessities such as education, healthcare, and housing is essential for human flourishing. When we prioritize social justice, we affirm the dignity of all people. Furthermore, social justice aligns with sustainable development goals. By addressing poverty, inequality, and environmental concerns, we create a more resilient and prosperous society, present and future. It's not just about today, it's about building a positive legacy for generations to come. Ultimately, social justice plays a pivotal role in fostering social cohesion. South Africa's diverse population grapples with a number of issues, including those related to identity. Factors such as race, ethnicity, language, and culture play a pivotal role in shaping individual and collective identities. In this context, social justice refers to the fair distribution of resources, opportunities, and rights within a society and aims to address historical inequalities, discrimination, and marginalization. Social cohesion hinges on shared values, trust, and a sense of belonging among diverse groups, ensuring that no group is left behind, fostering a sense of unity and common purpose. For this to happen, all democratic institutions must deliver on their constitutional mandate. Therefore, all democratic institutions must be productive, be seen to deliver, and actually deliver upon their mandates with their necessary responsibility and accountability. 30 years into democracy, democratic, but impoverished and still unequal. South Africa's strides have been made towards social justice, yet challenges persist, demanding ongoing efforts for a more inclusive and equitable society. Post-apartheid socio-economic transformation efforts pursued by the government have been substantial, but have fallen short of public expectations for more rapid change. These unmet expectations are likely to have contributed to sections of our society increasingly opting out of mechanisms that underpin democracy. From talking to ward councillors, complaining to and engaging ISDs, which are institutions such as the Public Protector, or seeking change through the electoral process. Poor living conditions and frustrations are a major factor motivating frequent and sometimes violent demonstrations known as service delivery protests that have been part of the South African socio-economic political landscape for a number of years now. Many experts and research maintain the view that the large disparities in access by the poor and vulnerable to some of the basic essentials of life are, I quote, a constant and stubborn reminder of the unfinished business of our democratic project, I unquote. It is a worrying concern to us that there are still a variety of socioeconomic factors that still manifest an unjust society. These include poverty, inequality, and unemployment, as referenced in the Sustainable Development Report to South Africa, released late last year. In some instances, these have led to instances of racism which erode the journey towards social justice and nation building. According to a report released on the 9th of March 2022 by the World Bank, Inequality in Southern Africa, which stipulates that South Africa is still the world's most unequal society. The inequality in our country has its genesis in the apartheid regime, and the democratic establishment has been battling to turn the tide with the urgency that it requires since 1994. The high levels of poverty and inequality are an antithesis to the quest for social justice. These are also causes for ethnic and racial strife. Moreover, they undermine the quest for social justice and therefore for nation building. Left unattended, they could lead to the maturation of risks that could undermine both the social and democratic order. Looking at some of the socio-economic challenges that still bedevil our country 30 years on. Economic inequality and poverty. South Africa faces stark economic disparities. While some strive, many languish in poverty. Based on research and statistics, 55% of our population, which amounts to 30.3 million, almost half of our population, actually more than half of our population, are living in poverty. Whilst a quarter of our population are facing food poverty. The gap between the haves and the have-not is widening, perpetuating social injustice and social and economic injustice. Poverty is not merely a lack of money. It encompasses inadequate access to education, healthcare, and basic services. We must strive for an equitable distribution of resources, ensuring that no one is left behind. While some factors, like low or weak economic growth, high unemployment levels, rising consumer prices, policy uncertainty, reduced investment levels have collectively contributed to the setback in poverty reduction, The worrying factor from the perspective of the public protector is the extent to which poverty levels in South Africa are significantly influenced by a lack of good governance and service delivery, and high levels of corruption within the public administration. Weakness in governance leads to mismanagement of resources, inefficiencies, and inadequate delivery of services. Approximately 30% of complaints that come before us as an institution relate to governance failures, whilst above a half of those relate to lack of delivery of adequate services. Looking at food security, which remains elusive for many South Africans, families struggle to put nutritious meals on the table. Isolation, overcrowding, and resilience on unsafe energy sources exacerbate this crisis. Let us work towards sustainable solutions that guarantee every citizen's right to food. Of course, poverty is a social problem that affects both women and men, but statistics show that women are still the most affected. Notwithstanding the already dire situation in many of our schools, whether related to historical segregation or the absence of good governance in contemporary times, the plight of South African children born of this country is further exacerbated by bad nutrition. Social protection policies play a crucial role in addressing food insecurity. Their aim is to reduce vulnerability and protect livelihoods. In this regard, we as the public protector have a pivotal role to ensuring social justice and protecting citizens' rights, particularly those of women and children who still remain the most vulnerable. Beyond the income-based poverty, we encounter multidimensional poverty. Lack of access to basic services such as clean water, sanitation, and electricity, which plagues our communities. Addressing these fundamental needs is essential for social justice. Having said that, it is undeniable that generally access to services such as electricity, water, and sanitation has improved, though I firmly believe that a nation with such character, diversity, and resources as ours ought to have the proverbial bigger fish to fry. Almost 30 years later, we ought to be far further in our development than what we currently are. The poor state of social infrastructure and unequal access to quality education, healthcare, exacerbate multidimensional poverty, especially those in the rural areas. According to the work that we do, the Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and the Northwest remain the most affected areas. This has been shown through some of the reports that we have released, which include the systemic investigation into the structural and issues affecting service delivery in the public healthcare sector, released over years, the state of service delivery in the Eastern Cape province, and an own initiative investigation into the state of the healthcare services in our country. However, we still grapple with unequal access to services, medical services, basic needs for life. Rural communities face challenges due to geographical isolation, while urban centers struggle with overcrowding. Bridging this gap is crucial for social justice. By investigating complaints, taking remedial actions to effect improvements, and monitoring implementation, our institution can contribute significantly to social justice and poverty alleviation. Now let's put the spotlight on corruption in governance. Corruption and patronage are two additional socioeconomic and political causes of community discontent. These factors erode legitimacy for public service processes governing access to basic services in communities. There is substantial evidence that suggests that local actors utilize basic services as a means of distributing and or gaining favors or marginalization of individuals who are not part of the patronage network. Research conducted by the Mapungube Institute for Strategic Reflection on patronage politics demonstrate how this behavior disrupts community bonds and creates divisions among residents, resulting in winners and losers, but furthering the lines of divide between the poor and the rich. Just recently, we have issued a report on the water situation in Hammanskraal, as well as on state of service delivery in other provinces. And these characteristics clearly show themselves. Now, what more needs to be done? The need for citizen-centered governance is now. The system and practice of good governance is an essential prerequisite of development. It generates much needed popular confidence in the institutions and processes of government. It builds an enabling environment for the private sector to generate economic growth, which in turn unlocks the resources needed to overcome poverty and provide health and education and is essential as a critical enabler in the pursuit for social justice. It is actually the institutional foundation for government performance. However, there needs to be a trust relationship that government will treat these resources with the necessary responsibility and accountability that is required. A strong foundation of expertise and skill in statecraft. In 2021, during the 3rd Social Justice Summit hosted by our esteemed hosts here today, the Lord Trust Chair in Social Justice, University of Stellenbosch and Council of Social Justice Champions, reflected on the factors contributing to the failures in government service and transformative constitutionalism. It positioned that corruption, fraud, incompetence, and indifference are often blamed, but one of the main reasons lie in the lack of expertise and skill in statecraft. Prof. Madonsela and other speakers emphasized that political determination alone is insufficient in shaping and implementing this transformative constitutionalism required for the transformation of the state and societal relationships. A major factor that undermines our social and economic progress is the deficit in the capabilities of the state. This gap was identified dating back in 2011. Further research and reports are being produced. The National Development Plan has in itself attempted to close this gap. However, if we would see the implementation thereof, maybe we would have been in a better situation. The rebuild of our public service is imperative for several things. Amongst those is the review of the appointment and dismissal procedures of accounting officers and remove politics from the processes. There is a need to regulate the processes used to appoint board members and CEOs and CFOs, even in our parastatals, which are ailing. And look at how the annual assessments are being done. Executive authorities to stay in line with what is the requirement in terms of the PFMA. There's a further need for a social pact focused on core nation-building pillars such as social identity, social cohesion, and socio-economic transformation. Social pacts have been and continue to be a mantra of South Africa's political transition, particularly where we are on the verge of entering in the next 30 years of our democratic dispensation, which in all likelihood there will be promises to bring about new challenges and maturity in the development and transformation of our democratic landscape. Professor Habib, at the awards ceremony of the 7th Annual Ubuntu Lecture and Dialogue Awards on the 1st of October 2015, stated that, I quote, "For as long as an equitable social pact remains a distant dream, we will not succeed in bridging the divide between economic growth and inclusive development, nor will it be able to address the related polarization and social pathologies, chronic unemployment, child and women abuse, substance abuse, violent crimes that characterize our society," I unquote. None of this will be achieved without astute leadership. The leadership I am referring to is of a political kind and involves three distinct elements. A deep understanding of the state of society where it needs to go, the obstacles in its path, and possible means to transcend its challenges. The ability to engage all those who are involved, understand their interests, and fashion a sufficient consensus among them without compromising on the primary societal goals, and do so with utmost integrity, and employ high standards of ethics. I emphasize on ethics rather than the rule of law, as I believe that the rule of law is a given. These are the abilities that enable leaders to mobilize collective institutional muscle as a collaborative framework to address societal challenges, promote unity, and advance South Africa's nation-building goals. Strengthening constitutional democracy and restoring trust in democratic processes and mechanisms through institutions such as ours and other constitutional institutions. This brings me to the critical role of the institution of the Office of the Public Protector in strengthening constitutional democracy by contributing to the building of a responsive and a capable state. These institutions exist to ensure that people of South Africa enjoy the better life promised by the country's constitution, the ability of ordinary people to involve themselves in the process of holding the powerful accountable, accentuate the very essence of constitutional democracy as supported by the institutions created in terms of Chapter 9, 10, and 13 of our Constitution. In recent times, we have reflected even on our own mandate as the Public Protector, and our standing in society, and have come to the conclusion that it is important that we rebuild and protect our own integrity in order for us to have the respect that this institution has once had. And also to instill a more positive response by state institutions to implement our remedial actions. It is through our remedial actions that this institution will be of impact to society and positively and progressively contribute to social and economic justice. Our role is most critical during this time of urgency to transformation. In recent times, we have seen the Fees Must Fall campaign, the issues around NFCIS, which still persist in our society, the bad conditions in our hospital, the ailing infrastructure, which basically means that as a nation, irrespective of our standing in society, it is time that now we bring together our resources for the betterment of our country, to ensure that there's equality, there's equitable access to our resources. If not, we do not want a different revolution where the poor will realize that there is no mouthpiece for them and they would stand up for themselves. Recognizing the centrality of social justice to the existence of sustainable peace, however, we need to also highlight the importance of harnessing the leadership of young people and directly embracing and incorporating their ideas in the co-creation of lasting solutions to the challenges of our time, and focusing collectively on finding solutions to the crisis we face as a nation. Andrew Constant in 2016 correctly reflects in his paper, Assessing the Performance of South Africa's Constitution, that in performing its task, the Public Protector acts as a supporting institution for the judiciary, the legislature, as well as an oversight mechanism for the executive. With respect to the court, the Public Protector is able to investigate matters that would not fall within the court's jurisdiction, and in other words, conduct that which is not necessarily unlawful, but that which is below the required ethical standards, yet could be deemed improper as well, unfair, and that can be dealt with by the Public Protector in pursuit of cohesion between the state and the people. Courts are dependent on evidence brought before it by the legal representatives involved and are typically confined by the arguments presented by the parties, whereas, on the other hand, the public protector can gather evidence necessary to make a complete finding on any issue. Its role is rather more proactive than that of the courts. Now, it is important that institutions such as ours are supported and protected because they were essentially established, particularly for the access of those who do not have the means to access the courts, but for time purposes, also for speedy resolutions. In conclusion, allow me to state that our test of whether or not we are effectively discharging our constitutional responsibility lies in the assessment of the impact and difference that we make in the lives of ordinary South Africans, in their aspirations to experience the constitutional promise of social justice and a better life for all. While all constitutional checks and balances are important, it is critical to mention that it should not be left to the state to ensure that we have a living constitution capable of accommodating our collective dreams and aspirations as a nation. It must also be understood that development should be the pursuit of everyone, with the state primarily acting as an enabler and regulator. My final word, when I was reflecting on the promise, hopes, and dreams that are such as integral part of the sense of justice that we seek to achieve, it occurred to me that for most of our people, a better life involves access to and security of basic needs and services, food, health, education, a roof over their heads, water, sanitation, and electricity, which many of us take for granted as part of an ordinary life. As I say it, and I speak for the entire institution of the Public Protector, we must positively experience this government, not merely be communicated on programs, but positively feel the presence of governance and government. It is this positive feeling and experience of government and other state institutions, including institutions of higher learning, that citizenry will see the fruition of what is enshrined in our Constitution. Prof. de Villiers, I really hope that Stellenbosch would really take up the report by our former constitutional judge, Judge Khampepe, positively implement those recommendations in pursuit of social justice. It starts with our doorstep, and then we can make that as an example, not only to Stellenbosch, but to the rest of the country and the world. God sien Stellenbosch en die res van ons land. Baie dankie.
There we are, our public protector. And I'm not going to rehash any of the things because I think some of the speakers coming up may talk about it. But I will say, just probably one of the last things you spoke about, you spoke about government and governance must be felt. And I think that is worth amplifying. And the one you said before that, you said, who will speak for the poor? I'm paraphrasing. But who will speak for the poor? It's a particularly challenging challenge that we have, and I'm certainly not a political activist, but I'm certainly an activist in the country. Those decisions about who will speak for the poor we made, I can tell you now, 29th of May, that election day is confirmed, okay? So you know that. Do not say you heard it from me first because people have been saying it for months or whatever, right? Anyway, so here's a question, and I've kept you on stage for a reason. Here's a question. You've now heard the public protector, and I'm going to suggest again, those of you who are on other social media platforms, the many platforms, please share your thoughts, agree, disagree, tweet, X, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, add your opinions and use those hashtags. You remember them? Social Justice Day and Social Justice Lecture, right? Got that. Now, that's the one part. So you've heard the incumbent public protector. Here's a question to all of you. How many of you heard the previous public protector, Tuli Moransela, talk? How many of you have heard her before? Just raise your hands. Okay, got that. Okay. How many of you have heard in the same auditorium the previous public protector and the incumbent having a chat together, like chommies? How many of you? I haven't. I tell you what, we're going to hear that for the first time tonight. Go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Hello? Yes. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests. And
Got it.
yes. Greetings, colleagues, esteemed guests, and the leadership of the University of Stellenbosch University, led by Professor Wim de Villiers, and of course a special greeting to our guest of honor and lecturer of the day, Public Protector, Advocate Kholeka, Gcaleka. Happy World Day of Social Justice, dear colleagues, and thank you, Public Protector, for such an insightful lecture. You have managed to seamlessly take us through the vision we had for our society when we adopted the interim constitution 30 years ago and started on this journey 30 years ago. You've drawn a link between social justice, equality, poverty, and hunger, and you have shared various kernels of wisdom on what we've achieved as a society and what you believe we could have achieved if we didn't stumble on some of those things that you believe we stumbled on. You've also indicated to us what is the role of the Public Protector and how we could collaborate with the Public Protector as civil society to make democracy's promises real to the average person. You were generous by saying that there has been some progress. And you gave us statistics for that, but you suggested we could have done better. And I believe that Statistics South Africa corroborates your assessment. The household survey was released today, which indicates that unemployment has grown. And you specifically told us about poverty having been at 55.5%. A few years ago, we have since been told that it's now at 62.6% across all groups. At the time when it was 55.5% across all groups, it was 1% among whites, 6% among those classified as Indian or Asian, 39% among those classified as colored, and 64.2% among those classified as African. Of course, your assessment is very clear that we need to rethink where we're going and how we do things. You also made it clear why social justice. I think you gave us a sense that we have to pursue social justice because it's a constitutional mandate. And you challenged us to understand that we are the people. It is we, the people, that undertook to go on this journey to rebuild our society into an egalitarian one that is based on social justice, democratic values, and fundamental human rights, which you called our 3 pillars. But you also made it clear that this is part of a global quest for social justice. And lastly, you also just suggested it's a strategic thing to do because social justice underpins good economies and stable societies. Indeed, you appealed to us to be the village that builds our own society. As we were speaking, I thought of Madala J. in Makwanyan, where he said the Constitution in its preamble declares there's a need for understanding but not vengeance, for reparation but not for retaliation, a need for Ubuntu but not victimization. The concept of Ubuntu appears for the first time in the preamble, he said, but it is a concept that permeates the Constitution generally, and more particularly Chapter 3, which embodies the entrenched fundamental human rights. The concept carries in it the ideas of humaneness, social justice, and fairness. So clearly, he was speaking about the interim constitution on the basis of which we undertook our 30-year journey, because that constitution was implemented 30 years ago. Supporting your view is also the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who says, social justice makes societies and economies function better and reduce poverty, inequalities, and social tensions. And you are very clear about social cohesion and the link between it and social justice. He proceeds to say it plays an important role in attaining more inclusive and sustainable socio-economic development paths and is key for reaching the sustainable development goals of the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, especially at a time when the achievement of those goals remains far away. So you gave us all of those figures. PP, I only have 3 questions for you. And then I'll give people an opportunity to ask I was going to give you 6 questions, but now you're going to have 4. So mine remain 3, which is a privilege, of course, to see our young public protector take the baton and seriously see that baton as being about serving the people without fear or favor. You did say it's we the people. So what can an ordinary person do to build an ethical state? You did say the rule of law is going to come on its own, but you think the most important starting point is to build an ethical state. And I agree with you. If we can do better on ethics, it's like when they say if you save the cents, the rands will save themselves. If we do better on ethics, we'll do much better on corruption, which is a thief that has stolen our public resources and dreams. So how do we come to the party and work with you to entrench ethics, PP? Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you can hear me? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. It is quite indeed an honor to share the stage with you, and I think it's historic, having the former public protector and the current public protector. It is, by the way, on your courage and broad shoulders that we still stand as the public protector. Now, speaking of courage, I believe the most basic and probably the literacy for the 21st century for the nation, for the people, is for us to be courageous. Thieves, those who are corrupt, and those who function through malfeasance, do so courageously. Now, we can't face such with cowardice. We need to educate from a young age. In fact, we need to start reading books of anti-corruption to children. We need to ensure that our educational system is centered around ethics. It is centered around human character. If we can go back to the basics, and our culture as South Africans is focused, as you correctly said, Prof, around Ubuntu. The principle of Ubuntu centers around the human character. Who are you? Where are you? Where do you come from? Where are you headed as a human being? And for me, that's really where it needs to start. Just yesterday, I was addressing the community leaders of the East Rand in Gauteng. And I said to them, leaders, governance, government doesn't start with a system somewhere within the state or within business or within society. It starts with the basic unit of our society, which is the family. We need to go back to the concept of family. We need to build and support families and encourage a value system which derives from a family. If we do not start there, we will not get to where we ought to be. I can't imagine if at my age, I can only be told now about ethics. It's theorized, it's conceptualized, but ethics, as Plato and Aristotle wrote on several papers, is human character. So we have to be human beings of character. And being courageous is a basic component of that character, and that for me really is the start of us ordinary people of South Africa.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot, and we have to tell some of our educators that are saying life orientation must go, because they want a soulless society where people are the best scientists, the best lawyers, but they don't know how to be human together with other people. Thank you, PP. Well, the next question is, as Power Protector, there were things that shocked me. The first one was just people lying with a straight face. And even giving a document that is pure lies. The second thing was, after you have made findings against them, going out there to society and presenting themselves as champions of the people. For example, without mentioning anyone, there was a case where I investigated 250 million used to improve somebody's home. part of that money, now this is the strange thing, part of that money was for urban development, which was urban renewal, jobs for young people, and better homes for people. And one young woman raised a question, which brings a question of the question of protecting whistleblowers. One young woman raised that question, that firstly, this project started with about 25,000, and we are now into multi-millions. But you can't take money away from a poverty alleviating project and improve someone's house. They just moved her aside. But these are the people who go back to the public and say, we are for the people. So I'm interested in yours. What has shocked you about human depravity?
Yeah. Where do I start? Yeah, there's just so much. I think what has particularly shocked me is a situation under the Department of Education in the Eastern Cape. We're doing an own initiative investigation into the infrastructure of the schools. And you find that standing schools where the students, the infrastructure is not adequate. There's not even a lavatory. And then you find schools built, several, standing empty. And when you inquire why, they say there are no pupils in this area to fill the school. Now, why has the school been built? Several of them. Was there planning? Yes. What was the planning for? What you are mentioning. It was self-serving. Somebody had to get a tender in that area, and improving and building in other areas where there's a necessity was just not a priority. I think for me that has really, really been shocking. But I think what has been more shocking was during the COVID pandemic. I went around almost 3 hospitals per province in our country in the height of the pandemic. Just as the State Capture Commission was in progress, doctors, healthcare workers, patients, lives were at risk. Not just at risk, their families lost loved ones. And there was money. And where did the money go to? It went to self-enrichment. And yet, again, leaders in our country stood firm in their commitment to fight the pandemic. And there's no way that no one saw in all the accountability and monitoring mechanisms that we have that something was just not right. Doctors were speaking out, society was speaking out, but it continued. And I think what is peculiar for me, it continued whilst the State Capture Commission was sitting, naming out and speaking to corruption and state capture in our country. But they were not deterred.
That's shocking, PP. This is where I say sometimes there are no bounds to human depravity, because as a nation we were on our knees as well because of COVID-19 for people to do that. And women like Diokoran tried to stop it. And today, her daughter has no child. Has no parent. But thank God that your office continues to push back against these matters, but also to educate people that poverty is created by these actions, including the failures that you spoke about at the level of indifference and ineptitude. Well, the last question, Pipi, you heard 3 people in this room being introduced as champions of the Council, well, members of the Council of Social Justice Champions, starting with our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Vim de Villiers, who's a co-chair with Basetsane Kumalo. Ashraf Garda is a member. Professor Smith, Nicholas Smith, is a member of the Council of Social Justice Champions. It is a Marshall Plan-like initiative that seeks to do exactly what you asked us to do. We, the people, decided to embark on this journey to make South Africa a place of opportunity for all, with all of the things that you spoke about. What do you think can be done to bring more people to embrace initiatives such as the Musa Plan for Social Justice? Just quickly, it's named after Palisa Musa, who was arrested as a child in 1976 and was poor when we met her, which meant recycling poverty in her family. And the idea is, what can we as civil society do to reduce poverty and inequality, but including addressing the ethics and corruption, the leadership challenges, and the capacity of the state?
Thank you once more, Prof. I think firstly is the consciousness of patriotism as a people, that it is we as a people, and that without this country's stability, is there a we as a people? And for me, a people is not merely human flesh. It comes with dignity. Now, it's us realizing the responsibility that lies on our shoulders, each and every one of us. I'm going to make an example with the apartheid system. And my mother was a community activist. Didn't have much. But as women in the community, they actually built a school with their own hands. Now, when I say we as a people, is for us not to think that it is only government or somebody else who is responsible for our livelihood. We speak of agility, we speak creativity, innovation. The men and women back then didn't have the technical know-how of that, but they knew that they had a country social responsibility to ensure that even if it is not their children who go to that school, because when my mother and other women did that, none of us at home went to that school. But it was to ensure that the community and the children in that community had a school. Now, today, I think it is important that we, if all of us have to be social justice champions, we need to protect what we have. And communities need to play a vital role in the protection of the infrastructure. Whether you pay for it or not, that responsibility that this is not just for me or the person next to me or for those who utilize it now, but it is for future generations. That foresight that we need to have as a nation. But we need to educate one another. We need to bring in more awarenesses. We need to hold one another by the hand. And we need to be patient with one another because our circumstances are not the same. And we seem not to be patient with one another. We are easily judgmental and we easily blame when we are in a corner or we find ourselves fixed. And I think, Prof, I heard you in addressing the students, you say, you are not going to blame NFSIS. You are going to take responsibility as an institution. And I think that is profound because shifting the responsibility is not going to resolve anything. We need to take responsibility. But again, we need to go back to the preamble of our Constitution and know that we means each and every one of us. It doesn't matter what our social standing is. We've got a responsibility in terms of the supreme law of the land.
Thank you. Baba Protector, Prof. Sandy would regard some of what we have spoken about as social accountability, getting people to be their own eyes and ears, to see what's happening in their name, how can they fix what they can fix, but how do they make sure that that infrastructure is not stolen right in front of their eyes. Well, colleagues, I think I've stolen your time now. I only have time for 3 questions. Yes, I don't know whether it's sir, colleague. Let me just say yes, colleague, at the back there. Yes.
It is hopefully doctor on the 28th of March, hopefully. I just shouldn't say anything dumb in front of Prof, so I'm going to avoid that conversation. I did my doctor's in electronic engineering. I'm working now in the energy sector. And that's possibly, well, you can call it the spine of the economy. And we speak about an equal and sustainable economy. It is also the most vulnerable spot of the South African economy, which is why there is state capture. It's where state capture started. It's where state capture still is. And it's why now, okay, sure, state capture from a South African standpoint is a little bit harder, but it's where international companies are going to start taking over. So we're seeing the renewable energy sector, which is booming, which is going to give us our energy, is dominated by Norway, America, China, right? And if they come into our country and produce all the energy, they're also taking all the money back out. And that's a massive problem, and that's what I'm trying to work on. And this is a specific reach out to Public Protector, is to collaborate with me and Minister Ramaphosa to figure out on a technical standpoint, how can we integrate law and the future of the energy sector so that South Africa gets richer, not the rest of the world.
Doc, give me your name, by the way. I know you.
Emil
Engelberg. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is George Olo. I am a businessman and have struggled credentials. What I'm hearing right now is somehow, to some extent, very disappointing, in that I do not expect, we're sitting in the country where the president is proud, he takes it as an achievement to have 28 million people on social grant. He's not talking about jobs. If you take the trillions of rands that are spent on social grant, you could have all the municipalities creating jobs and people taking care of themselves. But we are sitting in a situation where, probably, in my view, public protectors should not be chosen by parliament. You're letting the criminals, criminals are those who choose you. You can never stand against them. Because you have a job, and the job is a journey of the broken. And I say, my view is, private protectors should be part of inclusive civil society pushback movement. Any government in the world, I live in the States, where drugs are still getting into New York, and they know where they're coming from, they will never stop them. Because they are criminals themselves. And government thrives on dependency syndrome. They love it. There is very same government, I'm done now, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
This very same government said African children are monkeys. They can only pass with 30%. Where do you go with 30% if you legislate that? God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Can the mic come here? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lorraine Koza. I am the 2023 Social Justice Champion as awarded by Stellenbosch University and the Center for Social Justice. Yes. So I'm actually really glad to be here, and from what I have gathered from the public protector is that community is at the center of it all. I'm from the Mpumalanga province, it's in the top 3 of the most impoverished provinces in our country, and I happen to work in the Nkomazi local municipality, which has the highest unemployment rate, even in the Mpumalanga province, sitting at 67%. Now we have a lot of unemployed people, uneducated, it's crazy, food insecurity, you name, gender-based violence rates skyrocketing. And now you're thinking, who is the masterpiece of the poor, as you had asked as public protector? But once the poor people are offered with opportunities or any form of empowerment, the first thing that they seek to do is empower themselves. Now we have a vicious cycle of poor people getting into these spaces, or people who are disadvantaged getting into spaces, and the first thing they want to do is empowering themselves. Now we ask ourselves, how do we prevent this from happening? It takes us back to basic service delivery. If people have the basic stuff as food, the basic stuff as jobs, why would they then want to steal? Why would they then want to empower themselves first? So I'd like to put it upon all of us in our respective spaces. We know where we serve, we know what we do. It starts with you as a person empowering the next person next to you, and the next thing you know, the whole community is empowered. So who is the masterpiece of all these other people who are disadvantaged? It's us and everyone at the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorraine. Okay, I'm told our colleague over there, just a quick one, really, 90 seconds, ma'am. And then we're going to hand over to the pub protector. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Prof, and thank you, PP, for that incredible address that you've given us. The topic of the evening is, of course, social justice, and one of the key consequences of social justice, or lack of social justice rather, is the fact that it erodes trust in democracy as a whole. And that, for me, is one of the most frightening things that I have witnessed over the most recent period. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I was actually so shocked that you chose me. So my apologies. My name is Vuyiswara Mkhupa. And one of the most frightening things is indeed the erosion in democracy as a whole. And we often talk as South Africans about how we are, despite our various failings, we are proud of our institutions. And our institutions are of the highest standard. However, one could argue that in the face of an eroding democracy, what value or what role are even some of these institutions, and even the credibility of some of our finest institutions is now being called into question. No less your office too, as you would have experienced. So my question is to say, if we are to move or to journey towards a restoration of trust in the system, what are some of those, fundamental changes we need to make to enable people to trust in institutions again? And I would offer, as those who know me would probably presume, that I believe leadership plays a critical role. But I would want to hear your views on that. Thank you so much, Prof.
Well, thank you, ma'am. You've also helped me to focus in that direction. I forgot one of the champions, one of the members of the Council of the Social Justice Champions, who also happens to be the chair of our council, that is Dr. Nikki Newton-King, sitting right in front of you. I also have omitted Kaya, who's also a member of the Council of Social Justice Champions. And there is another person in the room that I'm eyeing as a potential member of the Council of Social Justice Champions, and that is Elita de Klerk, who's sitting right here in front of me. But at this stage, I'm going to hand over to you, Public Protector. There are 3 questions, and I don't want to summarize them.
Yes, I have them, thank you.
If you remember them, but if you leave any, I am going to help.
Thank you. Thank you very much. To the first participant, I fully agree. The Public Protector needs to play a central role in ensuring that South Africa grows its economy. And business within the country is critical because the money circulates within our communities, creates jobs, it builds our infrastructure and contributes to our own country here. And really, it also develops the skills in our own country. So we are definitely available for collaboration. But we need to collaborate beyond that, beyond just what is required in terms of law, in terms of various sectors. But we need to collaborate in, as I've previously stated, in the protection of this infrastructure. Because for us to be in the situation in which we are, even particularly in the energy sector, again, it goes back to the kind of leadership we've had, but to us as a society who played a role to erode in that. Now, if that continues or it persists, it will be difficult to sustain local business. So we really have to give that much attention. To the second participant, it's a very tricky one. Parliamentarians didn't put themselves in parliament. They were elected by you. It doesn't matter where the responsibility lies. That's truly my belief and strong conviction. Wherever it lies and where the responsibility is entrusted to, it must be clean hands. Doesn't matter whose hands it is. From the book of Tom Bingham, The Rule of Law, when he was speaking of the judiciary in the US at the time of the assassination of the young boy who had actually not committed a crime, he emphasizes the importance of clean hands which are entrusted with upholding the rule of law. Not who, not where. How it is. That's my belief. So the independence of institutions such as the institution of the Public Protector, for me, really doesn't lie with who appoints the Public Protector. We have seen an example in this country where you, Prof. Madonsela, stood firm against the president of the country, which is the president that had appointed you, signed your appointment as the Public Protector of the country. So for me, really, it lies with us, all we, the people, to ensure that even when we elect the leadership, we do so with credibility, because that is where it starts. If we act credibly, we will elect credible leadership. The third participant, I'm really encouraged, you're fairly young, and that you do not look upon the next person or the other person. You say that the responsibility lies with each and every one of us, and it starts with you. And that's really what it is. And that's how we are going to improve our country as a people, is where the responsibility starts with each and every one of us to remind ourselves of the preamble and the commitment that we made as a nation 30 years ago. What do we do to restore trust? Yes, leadership, and not just leadership, ethical and competent leadership. Accountability, openness, transparency, and responsiveness. For me, those are the key factors. Thank you, Prof.
PP, there's one question. It's not really an ethics or a legal question, and I don't know whether you want to try it, from Mr. Engelberg, soon to be Dr. Engelberg, about how we deal with FDI, and he was concerned that in the electrical industry, or in the electricity industry, presumably in all industries, shouldn't government not just think about who's coming to help us, but what is sustainability? Do we just take all help, where all the money is going to go away and there's no sustainability left? You may skip it. It's not really an ethics question. It's a strategic,
Of course, yeah.
Economic development question.
Yes, I think I answered that as the first question, that it is critical for us to actually collaborate in ensuring that we keep what we generate in our country within our country, so that we are able to create jobs, sustain our economy, develop our country. But also it is critical for nation pride. I'm going to make an example with SAA. Yes, I'm going to make an example with SAA. You know, when you get to our airports, whether here in Cape Town or in Johannesburg, I get a deep sense of sadness, because I do not see our nation's flag flying high. I see all other nations. But when you get to other countries, even in Ethiopia, you see their nation's flag. It's called national pride. And that is embedded in the economics of the country, and I think very core in the issue that has been raised. So for me, really, to restore our nation's pride, it is important that we put a lot of effort in ensuring that the state, our country's business is grounded within our country.
Absolutely. And of course, I can see that people are worried about SAA. You must remember that the PP has laid the groundwork around the importance of having competent leaders, ethical leaders, and therefore, even if you are going to make sure that these institutions reflect who we are, reflect our brand, they are led by right people, and they're not guzzling our resources, they are generating resources. Thank you. All good things must come to an end. We're now going to ask the Power Protector to just give you your closing remarks and then hand over to the chairperson, who is going to call our dean to send us home.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the leadership of Stellenbosch, really, for granting me this opportunity. I'm normally criticized for being a realist, and I normally say maybe my age and my experience allows me to be. But also the methodology of the public protector, Prof, allows me to be. The methodology of the public protector says, what happened? What should have happened? And what is the discrepancy between what happened and what should have happened, and how do you remedy where there is a deficiency? Now, it doesn't say what's happening. It said what should happen, what ought to happen. And I challenge each and every one of us tonight that as we serve our country in different responsibilities. Let us not go with the norm. What has been happening, what's happening? Let's say what ought to happen. Let's have thought leadership, and for me that's the only way that we are going to rebuild this country and that we are going to sustain this country, not just for the next elections, but for generations to come, beyond our living. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Public Protector. Thank you. Well, colleagues, Nelson Mandela said, it is in our hands. And that's exactly what the Public Protector has said to us. We have a constitution that points the way. We are the people. We have to make sure there's integrity, but we also have to make sure that we lift the things that we ourselves can lift. And that without social justice, we can forget about stability and we can forget about social cohesion. But more importantly, we can forget about public trust, and with that, we get democracy backsliding. So thank you, Public Protector. On behalf of the university, even though I have no mandate from the Vice-Chancellor, we pledge to work with you to make sure that our students understand what your office does, to make sure that they spread the gospel about what you do, but also we go into communities to spread this gospel that says we have the power to decide who will govern us, and they have to be people of integrity, and we have the power and responsibility to do the rest. Thank you, ma'am.
Let's give hands to, in fact, to both of them, the Public Protector and the Public Protector. I think we need like a standing applause, seriously, okay? I mean, really. It's a good time to have a comfort break too, but honestly, To both of you, honestly, I think I amplify what many others may say. It was a privilege to be in this room tonight, to listen to the conversation, the to and the fro, and also the fabulous questions that came through. I wish people in Parliament had that sort of questions that came through. It was just absolutely brilliant, because it certainly got us all thinking and on the back foot. We're almost done with the formalities. But perhaps I'll just pick up the one thing that wasn't said here, but I want to just amplify it in terms of where I come from Champion South Africa, because it's links to exactly what is being said or implied, okay? Of all the things that we speak about when we talk about leadership, and we need authentic leadership, and so on and so on, I mean, it's almost cliched, but here's the challenge that I've put to many people, and I'll put the challenge to all of you today. Is the big buzzword is purpose. What's your purpose, right? So we know what that is. But I've asked this question over 3 years, and I'm battling with answers even now. So what's our national purpose? What is South Africa's national purpose? And when people say, well, I don't know, what do you mean? I said, let me help you with an answer. Around the late 80s, our national purpose was very, very clear. It was end apartheid. We understood it. And if Nelson Mandela was the symbol, the purpose was still very clear, end apartheid. In 1994, it was nation building. Around 2006 up to 2010 came out of our ears. Everything we ever did was 2010. Since then, and somebody has said, well, maybe it's fight corruption. No, that can't be a purpose. That has to be the result of a higher purpose. So my point to all of us today as we talk about social justice is, what is your personal purpose? What is the national purpose, which we don't really know? How can we mobilize around a national purpose? And very importantly, how can you align your personal purpose to the national purpose? If you work in isolation, you're not aligning the two. Countries that align personal to national sees the country soar, and that's a challenge to all of us. Having said that, Professor Nicola Smith has done many of that, I would think. She's the Dean of the Faculty of Law at Stellenbosch University, and she has this big responsibility of the concluding remark, so it says, and the vote of thanks. You see two different purposes coming together. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. So much to discuss and so little time. And having said that, I'm not going to reiterate any of the remarks that has been made. I'm going to conclude these proceedings with a word of thanks. It's a huge pleasure for me to do so. I feel very honored that we could invite and welcome all of you to this very first event of our 2024 academic calendar. It's our first public lecture for the year, and I really would like to encourage all of you to be part of our future events as well. So, of course, I want to start off by, first of all, addressing our guest speaker tonight, our current public protector, Kholeka Gcaleka. We are so honored that you took time from your very busy schedule, as we very well know, for you to come and be the speaker tonight. Your insights and your expertise were really valuable. We, as the attendees, greatly benefited from your presentation. You gave us much to think about, to reflect upon. And together with Ashraf's challenge, I think all of us go away tonight with something niggling in the back of our minds. What can we do and what should we do? So we really value your contribution. Thank you so much. Can we give her a hand? Right. Then I do have a list of individuals that I do want to thank as well, so if you can bear with me just for a couple of minutes. I want to start off with our facilitator because I think his energy was truly contagious. And I think you also deserve a round of applause. Quite often I start off proceedings asking people to introduce themselves to those next to them and behind them, but in future I'm going to ask them to take those selfies as well. Of course, I also want to specifically mention our colleagues and staff and people who were involved in the lecture tonight. I'll start off with Professor Madonsela, who is our formal host for the evening, our rector, who is present and also welcomed all of you. And then perhaps also a special word of thanks for our absolutely fabulous students, Abungile and Liam. You were fantastic. Thank you so much. There's a lot of work that needs to be done behind the scenes for a successful event. So I'd also like to thank the staff from the Center for Social Justice, particularly Diane Kaisa, and it's very difficult to see with the lights, but Diane, where are you? Okay, so she's outside, so you can see that she's still working. And Temba, so you see Temba is here in front. Right. I want to thank the people from the logistics team, Amira, and the team at CCMD, our sponsors and media partners. I'm not going to list all of them. The marketing and mobilization team, Erika, Kaya, Akona, Louise, Belisa, Ayanda, and others. Because we will still now enjoy some refreshments, I want to specifically mention Paul and his team from Copper Kettle. So you've been patient and very interactive, and now we will reward you. And then, of course, because this event was live streamed, we also want to extend our thanks to the technical team and Lee Stellenberg, Tammy Arendse, Justin Alberts, and the team from Creative Gear. At this point, I want to ask Temba, we have a small token of appreciation for our guest speaker as well as for our facilitator or MC, conversation architect. Thanks, Temba.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Thanks for the time.
Right. So on that note, I am certain that you have enjoyed the evening thus far. But now I invite you to also come and enjoy some refreshment with us. And if you have to travel far, please travel safely. Thank you.
Well, I mean, here's the point, and you can get up, it's fine, because I'm not going to say more than that. I mean, the item says reception, and I'm going to suggest that as you go up for your refreshments, think of renaming it to call it We the People. Thank you.
Cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live and to achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.